All right. I'd like to call the Board of Selectmen meeting open for Tuesday, March 12, 2019. Before we get started, I would ask if you please stand and salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, looking at our scheduled items for 7 o'clock, we have Carol Marquis, and I believe it's Carol and Tom Marquis. Okay, would you please come in the front? And just state your name and address, please, for the record.
My name is Kit.
You
want me to sit down?
You can get comfortable.
Okay.
Be comfortable. You don't fight. Welcome.
Thank you. My name's Carol Marquis, and I live at 6 Sharon Street.
Okay. Just before we get started here, I know we're going to talk about sidewalks and plowing, but I kind of always like to level set, for the residents. So what we'll do is you can explain kind of why you're here. We'll get into the conversation. And we are fortunate we have the director of the DPW, Mr. Brian Gilbert, on hand. So you can share your thoughts, concerns, ideas, what have you. Then we'll pause. We'll let Brian address any questions that he may can address for you, and then we'll open it up to the board. Sometimes we go into solution mode. But it's a very it's a worthy conversation. So with that, you have the floor.
Okay. I wanted to speak about our sidewalks because I've been walking my dog a lot lately, and I've lived here for over 25 years, and it's always been an issue. But I was younger at the time, and I would walk those sidewalks, and I wouldn't worry. Now I worry. I walk up Shawsheen Street. Not only they have been plowed, but they're all ice, so they're never treated. After this last storm, they were left unshoveled for up to 24, 31 hours on Main Street. I walked the dog to Beach Street 5 days later on Saturday, and they were unshoveled. I was walking on the street past a gentleman along the way. I work for the town of Arlington Police Department. I'm a parking control officer, so I walk for a living. I never feel unsafe in Arlington, and I think part of that reason is because residents or commercial businesses are responsible for shoveling what is in front of their property, and it works. They have 8 hours after a storm, at which time, if they're not cleared, they are fined $25 to $50 a day until deemed safe. I understand that every community is different. I did a little bit of research. I called Somerville, does it similar. They do every 6 hours. Bill Ricka, you can compare us more probably towards Bill Ricka. They also have the residents do it in front of their own walkways. They're allowed 24 hours to get them clear. If they're not cleared within 24 hours, then they start ticketing. They ticket $10 a day. And every day thereafter, they keep getting tagged if they're not safe to walk on. I did speak with the town manager about this on several occasions, and before and after every storm I had to call. Is Shawsheen done? I'd come home at the end of the day. They weren't done. I'd have to, we talked several times. And I was under the opinion, maybe I'm wrong, that you were in favor of adopting some kind of bylaw that would make residents responsible. Is that correct?
Yeah, if I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
We had drafted internally we had drafted a bylaw change about a year ago that we were going to bring forward. And the bylaw was dealt with the entire town. And then after talking more internally, we thought it should be scaled back to more specific areas of town. So that's why we pulled it back. And we just have to revisit it and see if it's something we want to bring forward.
Okay. I also spoke to Mr. Kelly, and you told me that you saw a gentleman in a wheelchair on the street because he could not access the sidewalks.
We've got many calls on 38 right by Demoulas.
Yeah, didn't you tell me that you saw someone in a wheelchair?
I think a lot of us got calls. So Mr. Montoro is right. We're going to talk about it when we get in discussion, but this is nothing new. We actually bought some equipment in lieu of what happened last year, getting so many complaints. But we're going to get into what we almost put forth and what, because we've got a lot of feedback from the residents. This is nothing new, and especially that moving forward, we're doing a new sidewalk now up by the high school, and I always get the name wrong. It's the Smart Street program. I always get that name. Complete Streets. Complete Streets. Now that we've adopted Complete Streets, so in the next 12 or 24 months, our sidewalks are going to expand thank God, finally, throughout Tewksbury, so maintenance is going to be a big part of it. So the discussion has been there, and you're really bringing it to the forefront. So we'll get into what we already discussed and why we kind of put the brakes on it, when we speak. So,
And I don't want to sound like I'm blaming DPW, because I agree. This town's a lot different from 25 years ago. We had, limited sidewalks, so DPW could keep up with it. We're at a point now, it's not working. I think it should be a little bit of both. I think DPW should be responsible for main streets like up and down Route 38, because it was like 31 hours after that, the sidewalks were not cleared from the post office down to Shawshene Street, and from Shawshene Street up to Salem Street, they were covered. You couldn't even walk that area. So I think DPW should be responsible for that. I think they should be responsible for around the schools and things like that. But I think when you get into places like Shawshene Street, and this is not going to be a popular choice because people aren't going to like it, but if you're living on Shawshene Street and you have sidewalks out in front of your house, you should be out shoveling them. They need to be cleared by the residents because this isn't working. Right on the corner of Patriot Street and Shawshene Street, if you're on Patriot, the house that's on the left, there are so many leaves that have been left there because not only do they not clean up during the winter, they don't clean up from fall. So all those leaves are left there, and what happens? They get soaked with water, which now when they clear the sidewalks, it's holding water, so it's just a patch of ice there. So no matter what DPW does, they've got a mess because they've got backed up leaves there as well. So like I said, I think it should be a little bit of both being done, and it's not going to be popular because people are going to say, I don't want to do my sidewalks, but you can't have people getting hurt. And I would like to actually, see bylaws in effect and figured out at least minimally by the summer so that this can be addressed. We were lucky this year. This was an easy winter, and we had issues.
Well, let's knock on wood.
Right, right, we do, but I would like to see this taken care of before the winter.
No, it makes sense.
And I would like to ask to be put back on the agenda to see what you have come up with.
Okay. Fair enough. Mr. Brian Gilbert, so what I thought is, even for the residents, I think it's very valuable because we understand the order of operations, or I like to say what we do before, during, and after a storm, and how many folks, how much equipment we have, how many folks are involved, just to give you an idea of, what they're doing, how they're doing it. Would you like to come up and just to kind of explain some of that stuff? Not only to Carol, but to the residents.
Hi, how are you?
You can stay. We'll have a discussion. So let me start by just giving a quick overview of the snow and ice program. Okay. So there are many variables for a snow event that make up, for the most part, decisions that we have to make. But in general, there is a general approach that we adhere to. The first phase of a snowstorm is the anti-icing. This is done with either liquid calcium or salt to reduce snow accumulation and prevent snow packing and bonding to the pavement. We treat the mains, the secondaries, which can be called collectors, if you will, and the hills. If necessary, we go into the local neighborhood roads that are treated. If it's predicted to have a low accumulation, where we might go in and scrape and apply some material. We have 11 sanders. This year we added 2 liquid tanks for the dispensing of a liquid calcium. Given the weather reports and how the storm is coming in, we would call for a snow operation. This is typically around 2 inches. I would say that when we call for a plowing operation is really a watermark for us to say we need to get out onto the sidewalks. That is something at that point we need to say, all right, we're going to have issues with the sidewalks as well. But our first priority are roads, schools, and parking lots. In the past, we've had approximately 60 contracted pieces of equipment and 21 in-house staff. So we need about roughly about 80 pieces of equipment for our plowing operation.
And just for the numbers here,
Yeah.
what's it, our folks, DPW versus private contractors? What's the number, roughly?
It's 60 contractor and approximately 21 in-house staff,
Okay.
has been typical in the past. This year was a little different. We can get to that in a second. But the town is broken into 5 sections. Each section has a route supervisor who moves equipment around to ensure the streets are covered, checks on routes and checks on the contractors. And then each section is broken into routes. Each route is sized so that at the end of the storm, depending upon how much snow accumulation we have, it takes us about 5 hours to do a cleanup. After the cleanup, and depending on subsequent temperatures, a post-storm application of salt is applied. At that point, depending upon the timing, we would either send staff home for rest. If it's part of their regular hours, we might push back corners or start to address some of the complaints. But at that point, at some point, we have to get the staff home because later in the evening, typically you have a refreeze, so we'll be calling back to do some more treatment. So we need to have them get some rest. Sidewalks typically are scheduled at the beginning of the next day, a day after the event.
How about equipment? I know you should reference 60 pieces of equipment. What do we have for sidewalks? Is it 2, and then we rent one specifically machines for sidewalks?
For sidewalks, in the past, we've had 2 pieces of, two. We used to contract that out when the year that we ended up getting the Holder tractor. We didn't contract the sidewalks at that point in time. The pieces of equipment that they used, basically bobcats that are too wide for the sidewalk. They have a 5-foot width at minimum, and our sidewalks typically are 4. They would cause a lot of property damage, and they wouldn't, a lot of times the sidewalk is a little sunken from the earth around it, so they wouldn't dig down to the pavement. In our specifications for tractors and snow blowers and things of that sort that we'd use on sidewalks is 4 feet, so that we can actually cut down to the pavement. We're not doing as much property damage. So that's how it used to be done, again, years ago. Then the year we got the Holder, we leased a second tractor, and we put one of our own staff in it, and we put one of our own staff in the Holder tractor. This year, we had planned on having 3 sidewalk tractors available. That didn't happen, and I can go through some of the constraints and things of that sort, but to answer your question, used to be 2. Hopefully next year it's going to be 3.
Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong. Again, I'm just preferencing for questions.
Mm-hmm.
But it was last, I had the notes in front of me, but I believe we voted for, through town meeting, for that additional second, I'm going to call it, for lack of better words, a sidewalk plower.
Right.
Correct.
So we ordered that in July. And that would be the second town-owned piece of equipment, and we were still planning on leasing the 3rd.
Okay, so we have 2 essentially.
We have 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
We
we get
own.
to the question, is it equipment, is it manpower, somewhere in the middle, but, okay.
It is somewhere in the middle. Let me get to that.
Okay.
So I wanted to start first by saying that I think the DPW can improve its sidewalk operation, and we will. I do believe that this year we were challenged by a number of constraints where we were not able to meet the goals, and I think the town manager had provided you with a list of sidewalks that we do and some goals and priorities. We're not able to meet that because of some of the constraints that we ran into this year. But I also want to say that we do take sidewalk clearing seriously. We understand that this is an important resource. It's a resource that the town wants, and we have to maintain it. So we will have to reevaluate our operations to better address our own effectiveness. And where I think that improvement really needs to be is in the timing this year, because I think in past years we've done a better job at it. This year fell apart, unfortunately. And it's in the timing between at the end of a snow event and when we begin the actual plowing of the sidewalks. I think once the guys get on the sidewalks, I think they do a good job, especially with the equipment that we've been purchased in the last couple of years. Specifically, the constraints that we bumped into is manpower and equipment. From the manpower standpoint, I just told you we need typically about 80 pieces of equipment to effectively address a plowing event in town. The DPW hasn't grown in any of its capacity, especially given the size of the operation. We may have added a few people to the staff, but it isn't, I'm searching for the right word here. It's not a great deal in terms of what we're trying to do. We rely heavily on contractors. In the past, we've had 60-plus contractors sign up. This year, we had 53, and on average, only about 39 to 40 showed at on average, any given storm. So we were about 15 to 20 contractors short on any plowing event that we had this year. We had 8 times we called the contractors in. So just getting through the operation put more on the DPW staff this year, both during the operation, the cleanup, and the post-storm duties. So until we've finished our number one priority, which is streets, schools, and parking lots, and in some instances where I need to send the guys home to get some rest, I can't put somebody in a sidewalk tractor. Now I know that there were days that we should have been out there, could have been out there. Well, I should say should have been out there. If we could have been out there, we would have been out there. The second constraint, though, is equipment. We didn't take delivery of the third tractor until late January, and when we took delivery of it, it didn't come with a certificate of origin, so we had to chase the vendor for that in order to get the piece of equipment registered. And the Holder tractor, that the second town-owned vehicle, was in the shop for repairs once for an extended period of time, because we had to leave it outside because they were retrofitting all the lights at the DPW and we needed that space, and so we left that outside. And then when they jumped it, I fried some of the circuit boards in it. So we had to wait for that to come in, and it was just one of those things where it just escalated. We do have space issues down at the DPW, as you well know, and so maybe it would have been different if we had been able to keep it inside. I don't know. Most reliable piece of equipment was the one that we leased. So we had issues with our equipment, which we definitely will have it resolved for next year. And we'll be looking at the manpower issue, both in terms of the number and the reliability of the contractors, and how better transition our own staff from from plowing to sidewalk clearing. I've had a number of ideas that I've already discussed with the supervisor of highway and tree, and we'll be looking at those more closely with the foremen who, for the most part, run the operation. And you know, I don't care if it's 1 resident or 100 residents, we're going to look at this like we do all our programs, that there needs to be continual self-improvement on how we provide services to the town. And if there's a complaint and it's a legitimate complaint, or concern, I should say, then we need to address it.
What I'd like to do is open up for the board, and Carol will go back for questions. But for me, I'm separating this as Plan A, DPW, new plan strategy, and Plan B, maybe more to Carol's point, is a potential bylaw, for lack of a better word. So new plan, new strategy, DPW, here's what we need, to be more efficient and effective through sidewalks maintenance, Plan A, and then maybe we can dovetail into Plan B would be, do we consider a bylaw and let the residents speak? So that's how I'm kind of separating the two, helps me understand a little bit better. So, but at this point, let's open up to the board, and then Carol, we'll go back to you for further questions. And we might not have all the answers today, but to Carol's point, at least we're getting our gears going, and what we can do is come back at a later date and say, something, here's my plan and strategy on your side, and as a board and through the residents, because any resident can do a petition and help draft the bylaw, that would be the Plan B. So with that said, I'm going to open up the board for discussion.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Johnson.
I'm happy. I have two questions.
Sure.
And one pertains to Mrs. Marquis' question and concern about establishing a bylaw. And while I respect and appreciate and actually support the goal to get it done, I think you said, for the next season, I want to be clear with you and just have a conversation here with the town manager's assistants with respect to the timeline that's involved, because if I have my thoughts correct, we've already missed the opportunity to file a warrant article for May, and that would require that we'd have to have something in place and bring it forward in October. And there's a question in my mind if that's sufficient notice to the residents that, in 8 weeks or whatever it is, there's a new bylaw. So I think we have to think through the timing of that. And I don't want you to leave here with an impression that something can happen quickly, because ultimately town meeting has to decide if there's a change to a bylaw or a new bylaw be adopted. We certainly can propose something. You certainly can propose something, but the timing of that is not governed by anything that we can do beyond the schedule that already exists under the town's charter.
I'm not going to say I'm not disappointed. I'm going to say I'm disappointed because, as I said, I've lived here for 25 years. This is not a new issue.
No, we agree.
It should have been dealt with sooner.
Yeah.
I don't understand why it's a reaction instead of being proactive for stuff. That, to me, I just don't understand that. And I'm not trying to be, and I honestly don't think DPW can handle all of this. How many sidewalks do you do right now? Do you know?
We have about 17 miles is what we have identified of the 55 that we have. We have 55 miles of sidewalk, and we've pulled 17 out of that 55, and it's based on the schools, around the schools, commercial areas, and town facilities with it.
Yeah, I don't want you to think I'm not pointing fingers. I definitely think that you guys have, I don't know that you can handle it. I really don't. I never realized how many sidewalks were in this town until I actually drove around. And I'm sorry, but Beach Street, 5 days later, and it still has, I'm talking not just a little snow. I'm talking mounds of snow. There's no way you could even walk on that sidewalk.
On Shawsheen?
No, on Beach Street.
On Beach.
So you did do Shawsheen because I called about it.
Probably.
Route 38 wasn't done because I didn't call about it. Beach Street wasn't done because I didn't call about it. That's a problem. That is a problem. It ended right at Shawsheen, right where, and Beach is right there. I said, all right, so they did Shawsheen. So I have an issue with that, I do. And like I said, I'm not happy to hear that this may not be in effect in time.
Right. Well, and that's what I want to be clear on is what, and we need to talk about that. So I want to ask the town manager to kind of speak to that timeline, because we've already missed the May town meeting. I think that's fact.
Yeah, could it be done in October? It's early October, we could possibly do it, so I wouldn't rule it out.
I also collected bylaws, just in case you want something to go by, from Arlington and Billerica. And everybody handles it different. Arlington, to enforce fines, they have the police department do it, but most towns do inspectional services, handles it, just so that you have something to go by. I don't know if you want this stuff, but, at least you can look at how they do it in other towns and the wording, so.
As I mentioned, we did draft one. We actually have the language, and I can send that to you. It's just we pulled it back because we thought we should limit it more to specific areas of town, at least starting out. So we just need to circle back with that.
Okay.
And we had that ready within the last 6 months, and we met internally, and we made the decision to pull it back until we looked at it a little bit more closely.
Mr.
All right,
Johnson?
so I have another question. This one's for Mr. Gilbert specifically, and that pertains to part of the problem, as I heard you describe, is related to a lack of ability to attract contractors this year for some reason. So I know in the not-too-distant past, we adjusted rates. Have you looked at where we are relative to other communities? It seems to me we need to get aggressive about that as we move into the next cycle and get ahead of it so that you have the proper manpower, which in part solves some of this discussion.
Right. You know, and I gave more thought at that. We do have to do a survey, see what other towns are paying. We used to actually, I haven't seen a survey in a while. The last time I saw the survey, we were pretty good. Then we added we had another problem, which was signing contractors up early enough so that we knew where our holes were going to be. Because I always offer, you know, if you plowed for us last year, come back. And so I gave them first option. But I needed to know where to plug the holes, so I gave an incentive. The increase was based on an incentive. So you get $1 more per hour if you sign up by this date and get inspected and go through the process. But probably on the backside, we're really low in terms of what we're paying per hour. Do you know what I mean? Because I've always done the increase on the front side or the benefit, you know, sign up early kind of benefit. So that the structure is something that I do have to look at.
May need to revisit
and the
that,
dollar
right?
amount.
Yeah. And I don't know if, and I'm sure you talk to your peers in other neighboring communities, but if they're not experiencing a shortage as we are, then I think that's indicative of something that we can do differently or better.
Absolutely.
Right? If it's a regional problem, that's a different concern, and we have to get more creative. But I'd like to think we have at least a few months here to kind of get our arms around that.
Right.
And I'd encourage you to take a peek at that. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Crowden?
Yeah, I mean, this is something that, as we discussed with the board, we looked at, we've been looking at this for a while. I looked at not just a couple of cities and towns, I looked at 25 cities and towns of what their policy was for sidewalk removal. I mean, it drives me crazy. I understand how frustrating it is, but I work for Mass DOT during the daytime. So every time it snows, I'm out there working as well. So when it's snowing, I'm out there working, you know, 18-hour days or whatever it may be. So I can understand what the DPW is trying to do and what they're trying to accomplish. This year, everyone's probably thinking that we dodged a bullet with this one, but each year poses a different problem with everybody. I can tell you that he is not just the only one who didn't have contractors this year. The majority of cities and towns didn't have contractors. And the problem is that because we didn't have a lot of snow, it's not the contractors and their vehicles, it's the drivers. So somebody may own a business and they have drivers and they hire them to be working snow and ice season to show up and do these type of things. Well, if you only get called 4 or 5 times and you're looking for that money, after you don't get called for a month, you're gonna say, I'm gonna go find something else. I'm looking for, if I'm working 300 hours or working quite a bit, well then I gotta pay my own bills. But if the DPW, we don't only get like 2 or 3 inch storms each time or whatever we're getting, a couple of them, we only probably got about 7 storms or 8 storms this year. I mean, granted, they're a pain, but people can't live off of that. And so I understand where and why you are not getting people. We at the state had the same exact problem. Every surrounding community had the same exact problem because they weren't showing up because they had to go take other jobs. They just weren't, even though they signed a contract, they couldn't get the drivers in. So the owner may own those vehicles, but if you can't get somebody to drive the vehicle, it's a problem. And so that's where some of the things lie in when we have these type of years. I also understand that, we also have to deal with the potholes and the other things were out there where you may have to focus on, where are we focusing on? It's like, 38's opened up all over the place because of the type of storms we had this year. It was really tough on the roads and doing those type of things. This isn't making no excuses for the sidewalks, but if people are blowing tires and things like that, you got to prioritize on who you're sending out and why you're sending them out. One of the reasons that I personally wanted to step back from this is because we are adding so many sidewalks to this thing. We have to come up with a comprehensive plan of how we're going to do this. I know it seems like we're putting it off, but it's not, because if we're spending at least a couple $100,000 over the next couple of years. In a couple of years, we're spending over $600,000 installing sidewalks in this community, which everybody wants. And then we're going to have to figure out how we're going to adjust to get all the rest of those and have them plowed and maintained. I understand that, we can put something in. Every city in town has a policy that does something like that, where the property owner or the business owner, businesses are easy. If they're out there, they're hiring contractors for them to do their sidewalks, that should be a no-brainer. But we do have some areas where we may have empty lots along the thing where somebody owns a parcel and they live in New Hampshire. So now they do the sidewalks along a certain section, and then the person that opens that lot, that doesn't get done. And now we're chasing a trust out of New Hampshire to get them to do those type of things. We got to come up with a comprehensive plan that's going to work for all the residents. And I don't want to put any undue burden on some seniors out there, that they probably have to hire some people on fixed incomes. And if we put sidewalks in front of their house, and now I'm going to tell somebody that has to hire somebody to clear their driveway, that you have to clear 50 feet of sidewalk out there, and they may not be able to do it. So we have to come up with a really good plan of how and when we're doing it. I have children. I walk through the community, and actually I work in Arlington. And I got to tell you, a couple of times I walked up Appleton Street and I had to walk in the street because they didn't plow Appleton Street. I work right off of Appleton Street in Arlington. So I know they chase them, they do those type of things, but we need to get the right type of equipment. We have to come up with a comprehensive plan, and we have to make sure that it works for everybody. Like I said, I want to make sure it gets done right. I don't want to throw something out and say, you're responsible for doing this, and if you don't do it, I'm going to fine you $50 a day, or whatever it may be. And to be able to find out that they're not capable of doing it, or what needs to be done. Businesses should be clearing their sidewalks as they clear their parking lots. I agree 100%, especially up and down 38. You're hiring a contractor, you should be clearing those sections and helping out for the community. It shouldn't be a no-brainer. But like I said, when we get to residential and those type of areas, like, we're going to put them all through these neighborhoods, and I'm looking forward to them. I want more sidewalks. I want more open trails. I want people to be walking through this community. I want kids walking to school. I want kids walking from school.
Good luck.
Well,
Good luck. Because they wouldn't even be able to walk to the Heathbrook School, because the kids would be on the street.
Well, that's why we have to come up with a better plan of how we're doing it and what it's going to, and how we're going to pay for it. So if we come up with a plan that's, like we say, and the residents are supposed to do it, and the residents don't want to do it, and they decide that town meeting, they come up to us and say, we'd rather have the town do it, well then, okay, how are we going to pay for this, and what's the plan and what we're going to do? So we have to come up with something that's I understand your thought that you think that all the residents should.
I didn't say all the residents, but if you get a heavily populated area like Shawshene Street, where they're mostly all residential houses, yeah, they should be shoveling. And if they're elderly and they can't do it, well, it might be time for them to think about either they got to hire someone. It's done in other communities, and it works.
It's done differently in every single community.
It is.
Look at all the different plans of how, and each community did it a little differently, and we want to come up with the best plan. We're not saying that we don't want to do it. We just want to come up with a really good plan to make sure it works for everybody. So that's my perspective on it.
Very good. Ms. Stronach?
So, first of all, I think that this is a really worthwhile discussion, so I want to thank you for bringing it up. It is something that people come and talk to us about, and we are, as Mark said, investing in our sidewalks. I want to just speak to, and I hear that your frustration and your disappointment, but one thing I want to say is, I think over the last 3 years in purchasing, I I get that the DPW didn't have the piece of equipment delivered and didn't get everything on time, but just the fact that we're purchasing this equipment in the last 3 to 5 years is a huge step for this town in addressing that maintenance issue in a way that is sustainable, in a way that we can afford to address as a town. I also want to say that with the contractors this year specifically, and I'm not exactly sure why, but this year specifically, the DPW put a sign on 38 prior around October looking for plow drivers. There was one at either side. And I know a few times at this board, we asked for contractors. We reminded people that we were looking for contractors. So I don't know if somebody had a crystal ball that we were running low. I'm not sure. But I do know that we've addressed that as the DPW director, not me personally. But what I would say is I live on Pleasant Street. I have a lot of people that live in my neighborhood that have dogs and are constantly walking up and down Pleasant Street. So what I would say to you is that I see many of the residents shoveling, and I hear what you're saying, and I know for my small street, there's a group of neighbors who tend to, I don't want to say like to shovel, but go out and help our elderly neighbors shovel out their houses and things like that. So I think that, to Mark's point about a comprehensive plan and maybe connecting people who can't do it, I think that this is a complex problem that needs a lot more discussion, not just from this small group here, but a larger discussion. And I was going to also bring up the issue of the bylaw. And while we may be able to address a bylaw in October, to Todd's point, similar to what we did when we first implemented the recycling, maybe we could take a different approach to a punitive system. In the first year, of the bylaw could be just a notice. I mean, you can write those things into a bylaw. But what I'm saying is, I think the more people that we have in this discussion, the better the plan will be, to Mark's point. But you're absolutely right that we have to address it as a community, because we are committed to increasing the sidewalks. And so this is going to be a larger issue than it is just right now. But I think addressing the equipment issues and purchasing those, which town, meetings supported, because these were like one-time expenses, is only going to be to our benefit. And with regards to the DPW structure and processes, I like to talk about processes, I absolutely think that that needs to be revisited, and I think that we've gotten the attention of the director to work with his supervisor to say, we have to find out a solution, because we shouldn't wait for a resident to call us to tell us it's not working. They should know they're out on the streets, and it's hard sometimes to see the other side of the forest when you're in the forest. So I don't think it was anything intentional this year. I think it was just a multitude of problems that, as you were describing it, Mr. Gilbert, I was thinking it was a perfect storm this year. And we dealt with more, when we did deal with it, we were dealing with a lot of ice. So never mind the snow, it was that once the snow got on the ground, it was thick, right? So you couldn't walk through it.
Right, and I don't think, does DPW, do you guys even salt sidewalks?
No.
So that's another problem, too.
Yep.
I know you guys are trying to work on this. I don't mean to come off like I've had kids that went through the school system. A lot of times they have to donate their time.
Yep.
Maybe we can reach out to the high school, see if we can get a list of kids that would go out and help shovel elderly people's homes, or...
Great point, but what I'm saying is, I think it's a bigger discussion for the community than just this small group, because it's very difficult to go to town meeting and just say, here, we're dropping this on your lap. And I think that we need to do a little bit more outreach. I do think that you're absolutely right that something has to be done, but I think, for me, I want to have more public input into this, because this is, as Mark said, the last 2 years we did 250K. I think we're scheduled 250 next year, and then 600 and 600 to do larger impacts. That's a lot of sidewalks. And right now, out of the 55 miles, we're only dealing with 17, small percentage. So, you know, we can't be having, oh, well, you took care of Shawshene, like, these other 17, these other, you know, 40 miles that we're gonna have to be addressing. So I just think it's a great start to a larger conversation that people need to be involved in. So that's what I would say. I wouldn't be disappointed. I would be encouraged that people are talking about it. Just for me, I'm encouraged. Thank you.
Mr. Brian Dick.
Just a couple points, a lot of good stuff has already been talked about. And again, I agree with Mrs. Stronach that the awareness that you're bringing is great. We've been aware that you've been calling our town manager, and it's important for you to get involved like you are. So I think it's commendable that you're here tonight, and I appreciate it. You know, Mr. Kratman said more sidewalks, and we just talked about it again. You can see the amount of sidewalks and then the manpower that we have. Mr. Gilbert outlining that. You know, I think it's really a work in progress. And Mr. Gilbert, it's good for him to be here tonight to communicate those challenges that he has, whether it's storage, equipment, things that we know on this board that he has, and manpower. It's good for the community at home to hear that. So you're a big part of that, both you guys here tonight. My 2 cents on why contractors don't sign up to plow is the cost of insurance, to be honest with you. That's my field, and I know a lot of carriers are getting out of that business, so it's not lucrative, and I think that that's a big piece of it. So the other last point I want to make is on the solution. I'm a big guy into teamwork. I like to educate and communicate and draw a big heart around that. I think we all can educate our residents, our businesses on some of the challenges we've had this year and ask them, instead of doing a bylaw, and we have a bylaw, but instead of taking the path of kind of mapping out that bylaw, we can do that, but I think we can immediately send out some information to maybe those abutters of those sidewalks. As a business owner, I'd appreciate that than just saying, hey, if I don't have a sidewalk in front of my business, it's across the street for the other business. So I think there's something there to be said that not every business has one, right? But if someone said, hey, we're going to fine you if you don't put your sidewalk in, if you don't clear your sidewalk, as a business owner, I think that stinks. I think we have limited businesses in Tewksbury as it is. So I really don't believe in fining as a solution and being put into that bylaw. And I know we're going down maybe a solution, but my opinion would be to say, hey, try to be a good partner with Tewksbury. We're a good partner with you as a town. Try to be a good partner with us. And if you can see that we struggle with sidewalk clearing, if you could make sure that your sidewalk is clear. I think that communication can go out from our town manager, our board. We don't have to do it town-wide. There's a finite people that we can reach out to. We can start that immediately as we enter spring. But again, my personal opinion is I don't want any more fines. And I want to make sure that I'm concerned about putting a fine in for our businesses, and I'm concerned about putting a fine in for our seniors or people handicapped, maybe some handicapped people that can't get out there to shovel. So that's just my opinion. And again, I want to thank both you guys for a good hearty discussion. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Stronach?
Just one more thing, as you're talking about that, we've done a lot of education around cleaning out of fire hydrants, and have often sat on this board and reminded people to clean out their fire hydrants. So to Mr. Dick's point, that's something that we can do. I know that it's not really the solution that will fix it, but we certainly can do that, part of the encouragement. Because I think when we're talking about sidewalks, it would be a good idea to couple those, because that's critical as well.
Yeah, I posted pictures online, and there was a sidewalk that had a fire hydrant covered.
Yeah.
So, and it was right by the Piccadilly pub. So, and my concern, I know your concern is fines, I'd be just as concerned about suits.
Lawsuits.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Stronach. All right, I'll jump
Thank
in.
you.
Very good. So, again, very commendable. We always say, hear the resident, for the people, by the people. I mean, this is a perfect example. We don't run the town. We collectively run the town. So you've come in here, and you're very fair and reasonable. So very commendable. I mean, this is a resident. We run the town collectively. So a few things. Last year, we had a complete debacle. I think it was last year. I've been on the board almost close to 2 years, where we had one sidewalk machine, and that broke down, and then the phones were off the hook. And that led us into taking action. Again, it's been an ongoing discussion, so it's not like we haven't tried to take action. And we determined, like, listen, we need this. Why don't we have two machines? You know, we have 150 miles of Tewksbury to plow, or you said 30 miles of sidewalk. So I think I could be standing corrected, but it was either the May-October meeting where we bought literally we voted and approved it, and that was big money. So then we had two. So we said, how do we solve this problem, especially if one breaks down? And we ordered one through town meeting, and it was a ton of money, right? Any idea what the cost was that we voted?
I believe it was around 160.
$160K to get a new machine, and that was 12 months ago, correct? You said in July we actually got the machine?
We ordered it in July, and we took delivery toward the end of January.
So it hasn't been operational?
It is now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have been really saying, what do we do to fix this? So that was one point. And correct me if I'm wrong, but none of the contractors, we have private contractors that we hire, whatever it was, 30 to 50, they don't do the sidewalks. We, the highway and tree units, our DPW folks are responsible for sidewalks, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And coming into this, you always hear, it seems like every town or community, the poor DPW, I don't care. Remember, we're in New England. Every community has this problem. It snows in New England, so it's a very common problem. But it seems like the DPW always gets hit over the head in every town community. And I can say in the last 2 years, the work they do for their budget and the number of folks, they do very good work. To your point, I like your call out. No matter what you get for equipment, maybe you need more manpower. It's okay to say that, how we're going to fix it. So those are the couple of points that I wanted to stress. And I'd like to say, as far as Plan B, what I'd like to suggest is, I'm just looking quickly, and I do get a little bit, we almost put a bylaw forward through last year, and my big concern was being 80% residential and 20% business. And in the Merrimack Valley, we have a new census coming up, I believe it's next year. We are a very elderly community. Within the state of Massachusetts, our population over 50 could be high not only in Merrimack Valley, but in the state. So I was very concerned when we took that bylaw, and what we do is we socialize it. Go to the senior center, what do you think about this bylaw? I'm at a sporting event, so I'm very open. I'm in the Moolers, we're talking about, do we fine them? And a lot of the folks said, let's really target the businesses on 38, so we, the town, are responsible for these roads. And I'm going to just call out Revere, they call them snow angels. They actually have kids in the school that help shovel. They call them snow angels. They kind of say the program doesn't work. All the kids sign up, we're going to do community work. But anyways, it's a good program. It's called Snow Angels. But the town of Chelmsford has a very good, because we did so much homework last year to say, how do we fix this? And Chelmsford was one town that really stuck out, where on their website and their DPW, they have priority list 1 for streets. They have priority list 1, Plan A, Plan B, Plan C for the streets that are most important, to your point, schools, senior center, library. So I'd like to incorporate that. So I'm going to reference Chelmsford. Maybe you could talk to their DPW, because like I said, every single town or community in New England deals with this. So I think you brought it to the forefront. That's what you're supposed to do. Been very reasonable. And so that's what I want to share. So I think before we close, I'll let you summarize, but I think this is what I think. We need a strategy, a comprehensive strategy through the town, so through Mr. Town Manager, Mr. Montori, through you, working with Mr. Gilbert, is let's come up with a strategy, a plan, a solution. And I always said, if you had Tinkerbell dust, if you had a blank check, what would you need to fix it? Put all options on the table, because ultimately, we can help push the issue to the forefront, but it's the residents, we the people are going to vote through town meeting. And I do think we have enough time. Don't we have ample time to pull together something for October? I know don't we have ample time to really kind of do public meetings? I don't think we need a committee, Mr. Montori, but if we have public meetings, we put it on the agenda and say, hey, here's a solution from Mr. Gilbert, Plan A, and oh, by the way, here's what our bylaw looks like, and we can polish that through town meeting, through discussion.
Yeah, so what I was going to mention before Carol closes, so coming away from tonight, we did have a bylaw ready to go for last May's town meeting in 2018, so we were trying to be proactive. It was modeled after Bill Ricker, so we were comfortable with it, but again, to Mark's point, to what was said by the board tonight, we wanted to make sure we weren't, for lack of a better word, punishing people who maybe couldn't get out there and shovel their sidewalks, so that's why we pulled it back. We bought new equipment, so Brian and I, over the next few months, will put a strategy together on how we're going to address this. And it may include recommending a bylaw or some type of program. We'll have it done. The goal will be by the end of June, and I say that only because we have town meeting coming up and things kind of bog us down, but we'll have plenty of time if we want to put an article on town meeting with the deadlines in August. So we'll do something by the end of June. We'll stay in communication. I have your email. I'll let you know how we're doing. We can bring you back in. We have another board discussion, probably 1 or 2 meetings to discuss this, and we'll come up with a full strategy. And it's going to be a combination of operational strategy, possibly a bylaw, possibly a program, to Mr. Dick's point about trying not to find people. Maybe other towns have more innovative programs we can look at, but we'll look at everything.
Yeah, exactly, leave nothing off the table.
And we'll have something, I'll have something back to the board by the end of June.
Yeah, even if it's, like, I know a lot of the residents mentioned, let's us plow the DPW but let's privatize the sidewalks. So just come up with every option, and of course there's a cost associated with every option. And I know Mr. Montori he's very, very thorough. So I think it's perfect. We'll have a strategy, a plan. We'll have more public meetings so we can polish it and fine tune it, because this is the best input is you and the residents, and then we socialize that, through the board. So I think very healthy, and again, very commendable, very reasonable to come in here and fight for the residents. Believe me, we've been doing it, but I think it's the straw that broke the camel's back, especially trying to look forward. Now we're going to implement more sidewalks. That's fine and dandy, but for 3 or 4 months, there might be, it's dangerous. We have enough, we've seen it too many times, the dangers of not having not plowing the sidewalks. I think of the schools. I live right next to the Trahan, and that's, and I have to pick up the phone through residents, and I have 5 kids saying what happened, and that's when the equipment broke last year, and we got croaked with snow. So anyway, anything else before we close? So very healthy discussion. I think we have a strategy and a plan. We'll open up the public comment. We'll stay in contact, and maybe the next month or 2, whenever that is, I like to put it back on the agenda, have a very open meeting. And I think through this conversation, a lot of folks watch on TV, so I think this is going to be awesome, because I'm sure they have other ideas or thoughts or solutions, and just like coming from Arlington, came up with some very good ideas through that town. So anything else, Carol, before we close?
No, I just wanted to thank you guys. I know you work hard. I know you're trying to figure it out, and many heads is better than
Absolutely.
1 or 2.
Yeah.
So, I want to be involved in the process and help. And if there's anything I can do, I'll be there.
Very good. Very, very good.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, guys. We'll be in touch. Thank you very much, Mr. Gill.
Thanks,
Thank you. All right, awesome job. Good conversation. And actually, the next point on the schedule item is residents. Any other residents? Would any resident like to speak at this time? Seeing none, let's jump to new business. I'm going to open up to the board for new business. Anyone have anything on the new business? Okay, I have something for the town manager, but I'll just do it during your section, so I'll let you go through. So that brings us to town, Mr. Montori.
Just have a couple of quick things. We have a senior town council invoice in the amount of $8,351.14. I'd ask the board to approve the invoice.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
We have a town council invoice in the amount of $3,442.50. I would ask the board approve that invoice.
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A motion second. All those in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Okay, I just, before I, oh, go ahead, Mr. Montori.
That's it, that's all I have.
Okay. Before we proceed to the meetings and the rest of the agenda, does anyone else have anything for Mr. Montori?
I do.
Ms. Stronach?
I was going to save this for my own board report, but I am curious. I know that we've sent information to the town of Andover regarding the Dascom Road and South Street, and I do know from your report that there was some activity that could be pending at their planning meeting, and I'm wondering if you could provide residents, I'm sure I'm not the only one getting phone calls, and I know that we're doing the best we can as a town, but unfortunately, we're handcuffed a little bit, so I would ask for an update and any other actions that we could take.
So we did send a letter off to the town of Andover regarding Dascom Road. I did speak to the town manager of Andover, and the planning board will review our request for mitigation based on what we're looking for in regard to the impacts of the Dascom Road project, in regard to sidewalks and traffic and improvements to the signalization. So they'll look at that as they go through their process. They still have some ways to go. It's not happening immediately. They are actually meeting tonight to discuss phasing of the project itself. Assistant Town Manager Steve Sadwick is at the meeting, so he'll report back tomorrow on how it goes. The Town Manager said he'll get back to me when they plan to take up the truck exclusion. He wasn't sure when they would do that. Like us, they're getting ready for town meeting, so I'm sure things are busy over there. So I would expect I hear from them in a month or a little longer than that on progress. So that's Dascom Road. In regard to South Street, there was some questions regarding the possible rezoning of a parcel of land at the end of South Street that is actually in the town of Andover, and that was going to be rezoned from commercial industrial to residential. My understanding from discussions the assistant town manager had with the community development director in Andover that particular zoning change will be withdrawn. So nothing will take place in that, on that parcel, and that's being discussed tonight. That's it.
I know that when last we met, we were talking about South Street, and we were worried about the zoning there, and because of the water and sewer and all those impacts on that, and what that would look like if that area, just from your professional opinion, is that a good thing or a bad thing on the zoning? I mean, when
South
I read
Street?
that, I'm like, I'm not sure if that
Yeah.
would help us or hurt us, or, I mean, it's
Yeah,
really luck of the draw
it's
one
tough
way
to
or
say.
the other.
Yeah, we were going to spend more time and review it, but once we heard it was getting withdrawn, we stepped back from it.
Okay.
But, yeah, it's a great question. It's, you know, that the zoning they were proposing may have been a better option, but again, without plans in front of us or understanding what's being proposed, it's really tough to say.
Okay. No crystal ball.
No, not on that one.
Anything else?
I just know people are worried about that,
I
thanks.
believe one of the conversations they were having was with services, because the only way they can get into that is through Tewksbury. So police and fire to service that, I think that was the number one concern. Never mind water and sewer.
Yeah.
But who's going to service this? Is Tewksbury going to be responsible for servicing Andover, or is Andover going to be coming through Tewksbury to go to this? It's the way it's zoned and whether it's go through. It's a difficult parcel. It's like the only way to get to it is through Tewksbury. So it's I think that was one of the concerns that one of the reasons it got pulled off.
Oh,
Because
okay.
there wasn't an answer to that.
All right.
That was a
And-
big concern. My understanding was there were letters sent to the planning board that the school department in Andover was against any type of residential development there, because the schools would have to figure out how to get students
Kids
to school.
bust,
And the
transportation.
police department was sent a letter against it, so they obviously recognize it on their own. So
Their complications. And then I would just like to note, if you are talking to our state delegation, specifically Senator Feingold and Representative Robinson, that we thank them because they're helping answer questions and really advocating for us in Andover, because it's been difficult for us to have them respond. And I know that Representative Robinson I've talked to him about this, and I know other people have talked to Senator Feingold, so I just want to share our gratitude for that and hope that that continues, because I think we're between a rock and a hard place on this.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stronach. Any other from the board? So I'll jump in
Thank you,
quickly. When we talk about senior town, I was going to bring it up, I'll just bring it up. When we talk about senior town council invoice and town council invoice, essentially, we have lawyers that represent us, they do work on our behalf, and we approve invoices. So, again, Board of Health, Board of Selectmen, Building Department, and Conservators, and the list goes on, Planning Board, Town Manager. So, Mr. Montori, just to put it in perspective for the residents, we review it, the hours they put in. Would you say, as a town, we have a budget set for our senior town, for our lawyers, let's just call them our lawyers, right, representing us? I think the town, just to put it in perspective, when I look at neighboring communities and I see their invoices, and my eyes pop, because their invoices are literally hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we have these invoices. Listen, it's still real money, I get it, but still real money, but our invoices are typically a little bit smaller. So it'd be very interesting to look at Billerica, Wilmington, Chelmsford, Drake, what have you around us, because like I said, my eyes, it's amazing how much they spend on their legal team. So to put it in perspective, we do pretty darn good working through you with the years of your experience to keep these bills light, and I think it's a credit to you. Can you maybe just for the residents explain that? Because someone said...
No, that's a great point to bring up. It's a couple of things that are at work here. One, both the senior town council and town council, their hourly rates are very reasonable compared to what other communities pay. So that's number one. Number two, they're very conscious of their billing. So, there are times that I may be talking to them for a variety of reasons and we don't get billed, depending on the consultation. So they're very, very aware of that. And they provide us a lot of service that they frankly don't charge us for. One of the things they both do, which has been helpful, town council comes to town once a week and spends time here and meets with department heads, addresses contractual contracts that need to be signed, questions. He does it right on the spot. So there's not a lot of phone tag going back and forth. Really cuts, it's very concise what we deal with. So that saves us a lot of time and money. Every Thursday morning, I meet with senior town council, myself, the assistant town manager, the DPW director, and any other department heads that may need to meet with him. So again, we address issues right on the spot, which helps save time and money. So I think that's helped. And then finally, I think a lot of it has to do with the department heads themselves, who handle a lot of their issues. And everybody, no one has the free reign of calling town council. Either one of them, they have to go through me as a gatekeeper. So we're not wasting time. If we can address the issue or answer the question on our own, we do that. And I think that's saved us a lot of time and money. And we've been fortunate to avoid a lot of legal issues. Any of the major lawsuits that we have are dealt with by our insurance company, so that's separate and distinct from senior town council and town council. And a lot of things we do get bogged down with that cost money have to do with zoning enforcement, issues that senior town council deals with. But I think we do a very good job of watching how we spend or how we address legal issues.
Okay, perfect. And again, that was kind of a curveball, but I just thought of it, thank you very much for addressing that, because the residents ask, why do you guys approve it? What are those all about? And you explained it very nicely. The second thing is, back when we did your review back in, I believe it was November timeframe, through the board, we talked about seniors. I mentioned earlier, like one of the most senior community in the Merrimack Valley. So what can we do for seniors? We mentioned the word fixed income. We all have loved ones and residents that are on a fixed income. Their fixed income doesn't go up 2.5% per year, or taxes, and it's a real burden on the residents with a fixed income. So we said, through the board, can we come up with, let's call it a wish list, or I think I call it Operation Senior Relief. Let's put our money where our mouth is. What can we do? Because we know we have stuff at the federal level, at the state level, at the local level, but consider all those at those three levels, and let's make stuff up. What I mean by that is, let's go in solution mode, leave no stone unturned, and even if it's putting something on the warrant or through an article to say, hey, let's give seniors on a fixed income with a relief in this area, let's have that debate. So I believe it was yesterday or today, you sent me, okay, Jay, we went through it. Here's what here's our body of work through the finance director, through yourself, review it, and what I'd like to do, I'm gonna review it, and for questions, comments, I think you addressed every one of my questions, leaving no stone unturned. Well, how can we get creative as a town and show every other town in the state, hey, look what we did in Tewksbury to help. Let's put our money where our mouth is for our senior community. So I received that yesterday. I'm gonna review it. So my ask is, I don't know if you can pull that together within a PowerPoint for our next meeting, or a Word doc, whatever, just to say, hey, here's what I pulled together. You guys put that on my plate. Let's review it. Let's see what sticks, what doesn't stick. Some might be controversial, because if there's a recommendation to help our more senior community, someone might have to pay for it. You know what I mean? That's okay. But anyways, to demonstrate what we pulled together and what we may or may not can do for the community. So just as an action item to review your findings and what you pulled together for the board.
Yeah, that's not a problem. So just for the board, I provided the chairman with a document that outlines what we currently offer our seniors for programs, possible options that the board could, or the town could look at for improving upon that, and then some, conclusions and recommendations on things we could do. This is not something new to us. Even though we talked about it in my last review, we started talking about this, I think we talk about it every year. Specifically, back in 2017, we actually looked at what other communities were doing who drafted home rule petitions to provide senior tax relief, and we didn't think it was something we wanted to do at that time. But obviously that's still on the table. So this is not something that we've only been doing for a few months. We've been looking at this every year, and it dates back for a while. So the document, Mr. Chairman, if you can just go through it, make sure I've touched upon everything. I'll get it out to the board in the next 24 hours for them to review. I'll put a PowerPoint presentation together, and I'll make a presentation at the next meeting.
Very good. I might need 48 hours because it's pretty lengthy, but I'll do a thorough review.
We could treat it like sidewalks, and if you can get out there immediately.
Yeah.
Can I just ask
Ms.
a
Stronach?
question? Can you refresh my memory on the home rule petition? Because I think one of the reasons, I mean, we did a lot of work on it, I remember that, but I think one of the reasons, not only did we pull it, was we didn't feel that we had the delegation, all of the delegates in a place that they thought that it was going to be a successful piece of legislation. And
I think what really held us back was that what I've seen in other communities that have done it, and there's a few, it's a home rule petition that would take some time to go through. It would provide tax relief for seniors who qualify for state circuit breaker benefit. And those individuals, it's not all seniors, and I think that's important. So the seniors that would benefit would get a reduction in their property taxes, but a community would have to make up for those, for that revenue by spreading it amongst the rest of the community. So the rest of the community would pay for that group of seniors to get that property discount. That's how we've seen it work in other communities. In the communities that have taken it up, not all of them, but a lot of them are more of the wealthier communities that may not have as many seniors that take advantage of a circuit breaker, so the impact to them wasn't as great. We do have a fair amount of seniors that take advantage of it, so I'm not sure what the impact would end up being to us. So, that's kind of what we looked at, back in 2017 when we were looking at it. So we pulled it back at that point. But it's part of the discussion in the memo that I put together, and once the chairman goes through it, make sure I caught everything, I'll get it out to the rest of the board.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Montori. All right, that brings us to Mr. Brian Dick, meeting notes.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Melissa's been busy. She's forwarded us copies of November 20th, December 4th, and December 18th, so I make a motion to approve those minutes.
I'll second
I
that.
have a motion. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion on the meeting notes?
Thank you.
Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. All right, board member reports. Mr. Kratman.
Luckily, most of my meetings are happening this week, so they're happening. I don't really have anything to report. All regional transit, beautification. But a beautification committee has been going around to meeting with businesses and informing them. We're going to be putting the plastic bag ban going into effect in April. So they've been just going around and talking with businesses and giving more information and meeting with them. And so they've been active doing that. All regional transit's going to be meeting later on in the week, and economic development was scheduled for the end of the month, so nothing else.
Mr. Johnson?
Just very briefly, the zoning bylaw review committee will be meeting in March 25. So we haven't had a meeting in the last couple of weeks. We had one that was weathered out and canceled. So that's the next meeting for those who are following that process. That's all I have.
Very good. Ms. Stronach?
I have been busy on the elementary school building committee. We have been out having many public outreach meetings. The last one, we had one last night at Town Hall. We had one Saturday at the library. There were meetings at the schools with the PACs. Basically, the gist of the information that I want to provide to you all, which I know that you have the fact sheets. There are fact sheets that have been distributed among the among the community members, and I would encourage people to go on the website, either the school departments or our website, if they are looking for more information. But basically, the information is that on February 13th, as I discussed at our last meeting, we did get the information from the MSBA to move us to the next phase of the project. Before we can get to that, we have to have town meeting vote for the actual dollar amount, and we also have to have a ballot vote, which will not include the dollar amount. I do want to say that we had a lot of work done on exactly what that is going to cost a resident, and basically, based on, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm doing this in front of memory, which I probably shouldn't be doing, but basically, if we take the average house at being $404,000, that it will impact the taxpayer by $445 annually, or $1.10 per 100,000 if your value's over that, so that you could calculate that on your own. How did I do there?
Good, yeah.
So the vote is very important. It will be on April 6th. That is, people should go out and tell us how they feel about this. I will say that people have expressed concern about us voting prior to town meeting. We did that because we felt that we had an election, because we had the February date. We were able to get out that information rather than having the town meeting and then going and creating a special election that would cost additional funds. This is one project to solve a multitude of town issues, and that is laid out on the fact sheet if people want more information on that. But I do want to say that it is one project, as that's how it is being voted on. And I'm happy to entertain questions if board members would like more information. And lastly, at our last building meeting, the board asked me to bring forward to you, Mr. Chairman, a request for the building meeting to put their presentation on the March 26th meeting, and then invite all of the boards, meaning the planning board, the zoning board, the conservation board, so they can see what the proposal looks like. We are at a bit of a standstill to get out more information to residents, because before we can do that, we have to get the vote, to get the money to do some more work. So I do want to say that we have spent the $1.1 million minus $444 on this. The only line item that we overspent on was site costs, and that was basically because we did additional traffic studies and additional studies in terms of the wetlands, in terms of the conservation. So that was the only line item that, I mean, obviously we can shift within those line items, but from the original budget, that's where the discrepancy is. And that's pretty much it. I think I captured everything. Did I miss anything?
No, the only thing I would say, Mr. Chairman, if, so on the 26th, the Elementary School Building Committee would like to make the presentation. We have some license approvals that night for liquor license transfers that start at 7, so we were going to put looking at the agenda, we'd put them on at 7:30 that night. It's going to take at least an hour, based on how the community meetings are going, especially if we have other committees here that may want to ask questions. If we want to do the PowerPoints on the senior tax relief that night, this board may want to think about starting earlier that night.
Okay. Let's have that discussion, but I think it's, you know,
Maybe start at
it's at the
6.
forefront, so I think we
Yeah.
have to slate, that's 26th, our next meeting, so it's on the forefront, so even if we push, let's have that conversation.
Yeah,
I
so
think the
something to
school's a
think about.
priority, and obviously the senior relief outlining what we did, but we'll talk through that, but I mean, we have to put it on the 26th. It's,
And we were really trying to find a way to capture a way to get all of the boards. We thought that a joint meeting was too complicated, and this way here, everybody will have the opportunity. I mean, we have been doing our due diligence and as much outreach as we can, but we want to invite those boards in to say, this is your time to see the project. We think the special invitation to them will, some board members have attended, but we just want to put out that extra effort so that people can share what their thoughts are.
But even for residents too, so a lot of times we've had many meetings regarding the school. I've been to a bunch. Sometimes it's limited residents for whatever reason, but I do believe if we put it on the agenda for the board, not only will for our boards, but I also think we have to obviously open up to residents. So I think it could be a pretty good showing because it's top of mind, and you know there's an associated cost and a lot of still
And it's
questions.
very
So we just might
close.
want to consider where we have that meeting seriously, because it could be a pretty good turnout just with our boards alone. Yeah. So food for thought. We'll work through it behind the scenes, but I think we have to.
I just am asking that it get put on the agenda.
100%.
That'd be
Perfect.
terrific.
Yeah.
I will let them know that. Thank you for your consideration.
Very good, Mr. Brian Dick.
Yeah, just jumping on that same point, I think, you know, I too have been attending those community forums or that information nights. I've been to pretty much all of them. And, you know, I got to give hats off to Mr. Francis, the chair of the Elementary Building Committee. And I know Mrs. Stronach's there, and, you know, the town manager, the superintendent, the architect, the project manager. So it's a very good, informative meeting. They have been very good informative meetings. There's been a lot of good discussion. I think the next one is doing school Thursday, right?
Yep.
7 o'clock. I think you might have mentioned that. But if you, as a selectman and as a resident on a big vote, we're about 3 weeks away, just a little bit over 3 weeks away. And I've kind of kept count of who's attended those 3 meetings over the last 2 weeks, and it's been about 50 residents. And out of those 50, there's probably been like 2 to 4 repeat abutters, which is good to see. But it's very surprising to me that there's only been about 50 people that have attended, because I believe, you know, you're getting a lot of great information, obviously around the tax rate, but you're getting a very good presentation by the architect, answering any questions that you have. There's pamphlets handed out, there's diagrams, and there's a great, nice video that's on tap. So I do agree that that meeting on the 26th could be very beneficial to the community, and just to see the attendance that night would be good to get more people. But I wish there was more. I wish it was 100. You know, I wish there was more enthusiasm about this project, whether for it or against it, and get that discussion out there. It's a little disheartening that there's only been about 50 people at those 3 meetings. Hopefully Thursday, I can't attend that one, but hopefully Thursday, that'll be a little bit more robust meeting. But hats off to the people that are going. And there's been a lot of board members and school committee members and things like that. So it's a big vote. It's a lot of money, and there's a lot of problems that it addresses if it does pass. And so win by one at the ballot for the people that are in favor of the school. So I encourage everybody to attend Thursday for some good information. Thanks.
Very good. I only have one quick point here. Sunday is St. Patrick's Day, but that is not my point. My point is,
Mr. Kelly, that's not your point.
no,
Very good point.
that's not my point. The point is, the Tewksbury Redmen girls hockey team and boys hockey team, you want to talk about an incredible season, both for the residents. They head into the Garden on Sunday. They don't have the times, it's to be determined still, they're going to work out the times, but what an incredible feat for both the girls, the Redmond hockey team, for the girls and the boys, both to go to the Boston Garden to win for their divisions. That is incredible. So we're hopeful either the girls play, then the boys play, or vice versa. That would be good if they can set that up. But that's a huge shout out to the programs, to the kids and the student athletes. And again, so it's not going to be about St. Patrick's Day this year. It's going to be about the hockey teams, and I wish them and the coaches a ton of luck. And I think that's all.
Girls' basketball team did very
They did very, very good. Runners up, yep. They did very, very good. And we gave a shout out a few weeks ago to all the programs. It's carried through since the fall, the fall, now the winter, and hopefully the spring with some of these teams. But I mean, that's just an incredible, incredible feat for the girls and boys hockey team. It is really good stuff. And that's all I had. So at this point, what I'd like to do is enter, just for the residents, we're going to enter into executive session. We're going to talk about collective bargaining. So the conversation is, we consider it detrimental to the town at this time, so we'll enter executive session. Shortly here, we're going to take a vote. We'll take a roll call, and what we'll do is we'll go through executive session. We'll close executive session, just giving you a sneak peek, and then we'll adjourn. So what I'm saying is we're going to end the video now for the community, but I just want to kind of highlight the community, our next steps here for this particular meeting. So with that being said, do I have a motion, Mr. Montori?
Motion to go into executive session.
Do I have a motion to enter executive session?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Now, with that being said, I'd like to take a roll call now in favor of executive session. Mr. Johnson?
Aye.
Brian Dick?
Aye.
Stronach?
Aye.
Mr. Crotton?
Aye.
Aye as well. So at this time, it's 7:25, and we're going to enter executive session.
25.
Oh, 8:25. We have to set that clock. That clock is still behind daylight saving time. What we're going to do is kill the video at this time, and we'll see everyone in a few weeks. Thank you.